People think political warfare happens in front of cameras, in debates, in shouting matches. It doesn't. It happens quietly in data, in patterns, in the spaces between words. That's where I live. My name is Evan Caldwell. I'm 44 years old and live in a penthouse overlooking downtown Denver. 15 years married to Dana, 2 daughters in private school, and a reputation for flipping gubernatorial campaigns like pancakes. But what I'm about to tell you has nothing to do with politics. Not officially, anyway. It started with excuses. Dana's schedule became vague, her explanations full of fluff. Book club ran late. Tracy needed to talk. Just felt like walking around Cherry Creek. I could have believed her. I wanted to. But people like me, we don't deal in belief. We verify. One Thursday evening, she came home wearing perfume she hadn't used in over a decade. It smelled expensive, musky, and foreign on her. The kind of scent you wear to impress someone new. That night, I lay in bed staring at the ceiling while she drifted off beside me. My mind was already at work. Suspicion isn't a hunch for me. It's a framework. A lead. A puzzle begging to be solved. The next morning, I ordered 2 trackers. One for her car, one for mine, though she rarely used mine. I installed a data logger on her phone under the guise of upgrading our family security system. My world is built on information, and now I needed it more than ever. Within a week, patterns emerged. Afternoon detours to a certain district. Parked in front of a luxury condo complex. Quick trips with no explanation. She claimed yoga. But when I checked the class schedules, her name wasn't on any list. I needed more than movement. I needed confirmation. So I did something I've only done twice in my entire career. I pointed my weapons inward. Alan Trent had been my right hand for nearly 12 years. We'd ruined senators together, exposed billionaires, shifted the mood of entire states. He was the only person I trusted not to flinch when I said, "I need you to look into my wife." There was silence on the line. "Evan," he said slowly, "you sure about that?" "I'm not sure of anything," I told him. And that's the problem. He didn't ask why. He didn't press. Just said, "Give me 72 hours. I emailed him access credentials, her cloud backup, fitness tracker, call logs. I told him to treat her like any other target. With precision. With no emotion. Meanwhile, I stayed calm. Played the role. I was affectionate, present, even took Dana out for dinner that Saturday, told her I missed us. She smiled, touched my hand, said she missed us too. She had no idea I was already building a dossier. That I had converted part of our guest room closet into a private terminal. That I was collecting her digital fingerprints like evidence at a crime scene. You have to understand something. I didn't want to be right. I didn't want this to go anywhere. But people like me, we don't get the luxury of ignorance. We get the truth, whether we like it or not. Alan called just before dawn, his voice clipped and professional. "You're going to want to sit down." I was already at my desk. He sent over a zip file labeled Homefront. No theatrics, no commentary. That's what I liked about Alan. He understood the gravity of silence. I opened the file and started scrolling. It was all there. Dana's patterns laid out in high-res clarity. Timestamps, GPS overlays, building access logs. Video clips from the smart camera I'd installed above the guest hallway light 2 years ago under the pretense of security. I watched my wife of 15 years slip Dr. Malcolm Graves into our home at 2:17 p.m. on a Wednesday. She was laughing. He was tall, sharply dressed, confident in that money biotech way. I recognized him. Graves had shown up in a few donor circles, a venture capitalist with a patented gene therapy startup and an ego that took up more space than his LinkedIn profile. There were texts too. Alan had cracked her encrypted chat app. Nothing too graphic. Dana was always cautious. But it didn't matter. The tone was unmistakable. Familiarity, urgency, desire. "Malcolm, you're glowing today. That dress should be illegal." "Dana, then come arrest me." "Malcolm, you know I would. If I weren't already in love with you." And then the one that sealed it. "Dana, he's still clueless." I don't know how. I stared at that line for a long time. I wasn't clueless. I was methodical. I was patient. I was planning. Confrontation would have been easy. Anger, slamming doors, emotional pleas. That's what people without leverage do. But I'm not people. I'm strategy. That morning, while Dana got the girls ready for school, I started laying the foundation for something much bigger. I created a shell company, Havenmark Strategies, using my firm's redundant legal structure. I began generating fake email threads between Malcolm and a fabricated offshore broker in the Caymans. All of it suggested he was laundering insider biotech information through my consulting contacts. Impeccably timed trades. Strategic policy leaks. Enough to make a federal investigator salivate. Next, I inserted Dana. Not directly. Just breadcrumbs. A bank transfer from Havenmark to a secondary account in her name, a real account I had opened a year earlier for our travel fund. A few flagged phrases in the fake email threads. Keep DC wife out of the primary line. She doesn't know the numbers, just the pitch. She would never understand how thoroughly I'd buried her. Alan stayed quiet through it all. He knew better than to ask questions. He just helped. Cross-referenced timestamps. Scrubbed metadata. When I handed him the final narrative, he just nodded and said, "You want this leaked? Or delivered?" "Both," I said. Dana kissed me on the cheek that night, told me she appreciated how hard I'd been working lately. I smiled, told her she deserved the best. She had no idea she was already part of a story that would ruin both their lives. And I wasn't even close to finished. It happened on a Tuesday. Dana was pulled into questioning at the downtown field office of the Financial Crimes Division. I already knew, of course. I had orchestrated the anonymous tip that landed her there. The email was sent through a VPN tied to an Argentinian IP address and forwarded twice through a network of junk domains. Standard misdirection. According to Alan, she walked in calm, probably thinking it was some mistake. She walked out hollow. The detectives didn't need to accuse her of anything. They just showed her what someone had left behind. A series of emails, a few voice message transcriptions, and an untraceable memo linking her name to Havenmark Strategies. It was just enough to implicate her, just enough to terrify her. Especially since the emails carefully referenced offshore transfers and stock plays from Malcolm's firm. Dana left the station pale, gripping her purse like a lifeline. That night, she tried to call Malcolm. He didn't answer. His number had been disconnected. In reality, his accounts were already frozen. The SEC had flagged a list of unusual transactions under Graves Capital. His wife, Vivian, had received a copy of a damning report, one I'd carefully curated under the alias of a disgruntled former analyst. By that evening, she had filed for divorce and left the estate with their son. I watched the news footage on mute as Dana made dinner across the room. She moved slowly, distracted. She barely noticed the sauce burning in the pan. The reporters hadn't gotten all the way to the juicy part yet. No arrests, no formal charges. But that didn't matter. The story was alive, and public narrative always precedes law. The school called the next morning. Both girls had been removed from extracurriculars due to ongoing concerns regarding recent media attention. Dana cried in the hallway after the call, clutching the phone like it had physically hurt her. She tried to reach me that afternoon, called twice while I sat in my parked car 2 blocks away, watching our building through a pair of binoculars. I didn't answer. She left voicemails. "Evan, I don't know what's happening. I'm scared. Please call me." I didn't. Later that night, a courier arrived at her attorney's office. Inside the package, a black USB drive and a single sheet of paper. The note was handwritten. "You have 2 options. Option A, sign over everything: property, joint accounts, pension reserves. Option B, watch your name burn." The USB contained a narrated video. My voice, calm and deliberate, walking through the evidence. Charts, bank transfers, voice memos. It was all fabricated, of course, but perfectly so. Enough to make any civil court flinch. Dana's lawyer tried to call the number attached to the drive. It rang once, then disconnected. Just like I planned. And so, just like that, the walls closed in. Not violently. Not all at once. But with the silent, steady pressure of inevitability. By the time Dana figured out she wasn't the target, but merely collateral, it was already too late. Dana's hands trembled as she stepped out of her car, the late summer wind rippling through the dry fields around her. The barn looked abandoned from a distance, paint chipped, roof uneven, but the black SUV parked nearby told her she was in the right place. She wasn't sure what she expected, only that the voice on the message had said, "Come alone. You'll get the truth." She wasn't the only one who got that message. Malcolm arrived minutes later, looking thinner than the last time she saw him. His tailored suit hung awkwardly from his frame now, his eyes sunken and alert. They didn't speak at first, just exchanged a look, somewhere between blame and disbelief. The barn door creaked open. Inside, a single long table faced a wall of mounted screens. A laptop waited in the center, already glowing. As they approached, it flickered to life. Evan's face appeared. He looked healthy, calm, hair neatly combed, shirt pressed. The same man who used to kiss Dana's forehead each morning, except now his eyes held something colder. "Hello, Dana." "Malcolm," he said, like this was a business meeting. "Glad you could make it." Dana opened her mouth, but Evan cut her off with a gesture. "No interruptions. You've both earned the right to listen." The screens behind him lit up, clip after clip. Dana saw herself laughing on the balcony of the Caldwell penthouse with Malcolm. Malcolm with his hand on her hip, whispering something in her ear. Footage of them slipping into hotels under aliases. One screen looped her daughters playing in the backyard, unknowingly being watched. "This," Evan said, "is what betrayal looks like. Not just to me. To them." He pointed to the girls. "You brought poison into their home. Into mine." Malcolm shifted, jaw clenched. "This isn't justice. This is obsession." Evan ignored him. Another screen played footage of bank transfers, faked, but precise. Email drafts implicating them both in insider trading. One showed Dana's supposed signature on an agreement she'd never seen before. Her knees buckled slightly. "You won't find a prosecutor who won't salivate over this," Evan said. "And if you think I won't burn it all down, you've misread who I am." He paused. "But I'm offering a choice." A silence stretched. "One," Evan continued, "you both signed full confessions, admitting financial misconduct, fraud, moral negligence. You lose everything. Property, careers, reputations. Dana, you get limited contact with the girls, supervised, monthly." Dana inhaled sharply. "You can't." "I can," Evan said. "Two, you don't sign. You flee, spin, deny. And I ensure every news outlet from here to D.C. gets this entire package. You'll be fugitives in all but name." He turned to Malcolm on the screen. "Vivian has already filed. You know what's in your past, Malcolm. The gray areas. The trials you push through without oversight. You think I won't drag that into the light?" Malcolm swallowed, saying nothing. Dana stepped forward. "Let me talk to the girls. One call a week. Just their voices." Evan stared at her a long moment, then nodded once. "You'll never have custody," he said flatly. "I know." Malcolm looked at the papers on the table. "This is blackmail. This is what happens," Evan said, "when you treat a man's life like a playground." Silence settled over the barn like dust. Dana picked up the pen. Her fingers barely held steady, but she signed. Malcolm stood frozen, jaw set. Then Evan said one final thing. "Or I could just tell them about the stem cell trial you ran in Guatemala. The ones with unlicensed compounds. The ones where 3 infants died." Malcolm's eyes darted to Dana. She stared at him in horror. He signed. The screen flickered off. And the barn, once filled with deception, was now just empty. The official story was that I had been abducted. The Denver Tribune ran the headline first. "Political strategist found alive after alleged kidnapping, foreign lobbying under scrutiny." I didn't write the article, but I might as well have. Alan handled the leak. The footage of me stepping out of a black SUV in the Rockies, disoriented but unharmed, was staged perfectly. No one questioned the bruises, applied with professional-grade theater makeup, or the bruised voice I used in the one interview I granted. I said I remembered little, that I'd been lured by a new client and held for information on campaign lobbying contacts. I played the part of the survivor. People ate it up. No one dug deeper. No one wanted to. The media was happy to focus on Malcolm's downfall. SEC hearings. Corporate bans. University ethics probes. His name was radioactive now, not just in biotech, but across every venture capital circle from Palo Alto to Cambridge. Even his former interns had publicly distanced themselves. He sold what little he had left and relocated to a research facility in rural Argentina, a place where no one asked questions and no one remembered his name. Dana wasn't so lucky. She lost her license to practice environmental law after her confession was quietly released to a watchdog blog. She claimed it was coerced, but no one cared. The optics were too juicy. A wife entangled in her husband's scandals. A mother who signed away everything in exchange for access to her kids. She moved into a small apartment outside Boulder. The penthouse was sold, proceeds transferred to a trust in my name. I told the girls it was necessary, that we were simplifying. They were too young to question it. At first, Dana saw them once a month. A supervised visitation center with toys that hadn't been cleaned in years and posters of cartoon owls about feelings. I sat in the car, watching through the glass. She smiled for them. Tried so hard. But the girls always came home quiet. I rebuilt my public image swiftly. Claimed I was stepping back from politics, focusing on family and healing. The media respected that. They always do when you give them a clean arc. fall, redemption, peace. In truth, I didn't step back. I just stopped showing my face. I pulled strings behind curtains, whispered strategies through proxies. Influence was always best served invisible. At home, I controlled every narrative. School meetings, dentist visits, even their bedtime stories. I was in every detail. I filtered their news, their internet usage, their social media settings. I told myself I was protecting them. But sometimes, I caught glimpses of confusion in their eyes. When one of them asked if mommy had done something bad. When the younger one cried during a math test because daddy doesn't like mistakes. When they stopped drawing pictures of the whole family. I told myself it was temporary. Bet they'd understand one day. But even I couldn't shake the thought that lingered more each night. Maybe the only thing more dangerous than betrayal is raising children in its shadow. 3 years later, the air in the house was different. Not silent, just heavier. Like the walls themselves had absorbed everything that had happened and were still deciding what to do with it. My daughters were older now. Vanessa was 16, bold and sarcastic, with a sharpness that reminded me of Dana at that age. Sophie was 13, quieter, always observing. The kind of kid who noticed the missing pauses in a sentence or when a door was left unlocked. They'd stopped asking about their mother directly about a year ago. Not because they didn't care, but because they sensed the rules. And I had a lot of rules. But they were getting smarter. And more importantly, they were growing into their own minds. It started after Sophie got in trouble at school. Something about a heated group project argument that escalated to a counselor visit. The report said she told a classmate. Some lies are worse than the truth. When I picked her up, she didn't look sorry. She looked angry. Vanessa confronted me that night. We were sitting at the kitchen table, the quiet hum of the fridge filling the space between us. She didn't bother easing into it. Dad, why did Mom lose everything? I put down my coffee. We've talked about this. She made choices. No, she interrupted. We've heard your version, but that's all we've ever heard. I stayed silent. Sophie came in then, sitting beside her sister like it was rehearsed. She didn't say anything. She just looked at me with those wide, cautious eyes. And in that moment, I realized the foundation I'd built, so carefully, so strategically, was starting to crack. I tried to answer carefully. Your mother made mistakes. She hurt our family. So did you, Vanessa said. But you're the only one who got to keep us. The words hit harder than I expected. I thought I was protecting them all these years, curating their world, controlling the narrative like I controlled everything else. But I hadn't considered the cost. They didn't see a hero. They saw a mystery. A man who buried the past instead of explaining it. And as they grew, that silence had become its own kind of betrayal. That night, after they went to bed, I sat in my study for hours. I looked over old documents, news clippings, case files. All the pieces of the empire I had built on revenge. It didn't feel like victory anymore. The next morning, I called Dana. I hadn't spoken to her directly in over 2 years. Just updates through lawyers, emails for scheduling visits. She answered on the third ring. Evan? Her voice was tentative. They want to know more, I said. About you. About us. Silence. Then a soft, I figured this day would come. I'm lifting the restrictions. You can see them more. Unsupervised. She didn't cry. She just said, thank you. That same week, I had Alan disable the surveillance protocols I'd placed on Malcolm. I no longer cared where he was or what he did. For the first time in years, I stopped watching my enemies and started watching my daughters. They didn't need a mastermind. They needed a father. And maybe, just maybe, it wasn't too late to become one. It was Vanessa's idea. She sent the group text like it was no big deal. Vanessa, I think we should do dinner. All of us. In Colorado. Just once. I stared at it for a long time before responding. Me? Who's all of us? Vanessa. You know who. Don't make it weird. She was 16 when she sent that. Almost 17. Brave in that stubborn, teenage way that sounded like confidence but was really just hope wrapped in armor. Sophie followed up a minute later with a thumbs-up emoji. They weren't asking. I called Dana the next day. Her voice was stronger than the last time we'd spoken. She'd found part-time work with a local conservation group. Nothing glamorous, but steady. She seemed okay. They want this, I said. Are you willing? Yes, she replied instantly. Are you? That part took longer to answer. We met at a quiet restaurant in Estes Park, a rustic little place with stone walls and string lights, halfway between casual and special. Neutral territory. Dana arrived first, seated at a round table near the back. She looked older, tired, but not broken. When I walked in with the girls, there was a flicker of something in her eyes. Maybe sadness. Maybe relief. Vanessa hugged her first. Sophie followed without hesitation. I stood for a beat before sitting down. Dana and I exchanged a nod. No smile. No pleasantries. Just acknowledgement. Dinner was strange at first. Too quiet. Everyone picking at bread, avoiding anything real. Then Sophie blurted out, "Dad, did you really send a flash drive to Mom's lawyer?" Dana let out a surprised laugh. I closed my eyes and nodded. Vanessa raised an eyebrow. "And you faked a mental breakdown?" "Among other things," I said. I was angry. I wanted control. Dana looked at me, not with hate, but something else. "You got it." "Not really," I admitted. "Not where it mattered." That opened the door. The girls asked questions. We answered. Some honestly, some carefully. We didn't sugarcoat everything, but we didn't gut each other either. The conversation wasn't healing, not yet, but it was human. Vanessa lifted her water glass. To moving on. Dana hesitated, then raised hers. I looked at Sophie. She smiled, hesitant but sincere. I clinked my glass to theirs. The rest of dinner felt lighter. We talked about school, about Vanessa learning to drive, about Sophie joining the debate team. Dana smiled more than I'd seen in years. I didn't say much. I watched. Afterward, Dana and the girls walked to the parking lot together. I stayed back, pretending to settle the bill. When I stepped outside, Vanessa was waiting. "Thanks for coming," she said. I nodded. "Thanks for asking." She looked at me for a long moment. "We're not choosing sides anymore. We're choosing truth, even the messy kind." I smiled, just a little. "That's a good choice." She reached into her pocket, handed me a folded slip of paper. "Sophie wrote this. She said if you ever wanted to talk like a real person, not a strategist, you should read it." I took it. They drove off with Dana. I stood in the parking lot long after the taillights disappeared. I opened the paper. It said, "Even if you win, it doesn't mean nobody lost." She was right. But for the first time, I was willing to lose a little if it meant they could finally be free of everything I'd carried, everything I'd built. And maybe, just maybe, that was the real victory.